Join Clark Lunt and David Shaw for the Burn Your Boats Timely 10, where they share insights on the latest real estate investing trends, market conditions, and statistics. Stay updated on the industry with these expert hosts and learn how to create wealth through smart investments.
Guys, breaking news today out of Orlando. You may or may not have heard, but the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, basically passed a legislation, and it's called HB 621.
Florida, we say very simply, what passes muster in New York and California is not passing muster here. You are not going to be able to commandeer somebody's private property and expect to get away with it. We are, in the state of Florida, ending the squatter scam once and for all. And
okay, and what the heck does that mean? Why do you even care, right? Well, essentially, it does a couple of things, but it's essentially eliminating 99% of squatter rights. Okay, and squatter is basically someone that moves into a property. They don't have a lease. They didn't buy it. They have no reason for being there. They're not paying a dime for this thing, and they're just a drain on society. And so DeSantis has stepped up and said no more, right? And you've probably heard so many tales out of California, out of New York, about these horror stories. These people are just living there for years and years. And I remember there was one, David, in California, where someone stayed in an Airbnb and they were there for like 3 years. And the owner, I think, almost went to jail. So it's just bad stuff. And I think DeSantis has kind of drawn the line in the sand. And again, this is not a political post. This is just a single issue that we're here to talk about. Now, David, I know that you have had to deal with a lot of squatters over the years, especially because you bought a lot of properties at the auction where you get the property, and whether it's empty, whether it's got 26 cats in it, or whether it's got a squatter in it, you get to deal with that. So you can probably speak to this with a lot of genuine, probably excitement, if I had to guess. So tell us a little bit about your experience with this. Tell us a little bit about what this actually does for the property owner. And this is not just for investors, right? This is for you own a property in Florida. These are the rights that you're getting back. So take us through a little bit of what this does. And I know you've got a story or two to share about this with squatters.
Yeah, I got a lot of stories, Clark, and thanks for bringing this issue up on our Timely 10. This has a lot of impacts that society doesn't really see, in that it's obvious, right? Let's say you're a landlord and you rent your home out, and at the end of the lease, you go and you notify your tenant that the lease is up for renewal. And let's say you don't hear from your tenant, give them a 30-day notice or whatever. You send your property manager over, nobody there. And, then on, the first of the month when they're supposed to move out, there's still, no communication, right? And you get in there and you find out that the person who leased your property is gone, has moved back to Idaho, right? But their brother-in-law took over the lease 6 months ago. But then the brother-in-law, he moved, out to California. And now the brother-in-law's friend is there. And he knows the game, right? So the person you leased the property to, no longer there. The person who they gave the lease to, no longer there. And then you've got a third person. This is just one example. And then you get there, you want to, get your property ready to turn around. And you've got this essentially leech in your property who is saying, no, I'm not moving out. You got to force me out of here. And they think it's a game because they know how to play it. You got to get me out of here. And so when you get me out of here, I'll leave. But until then, we won't. And so that's just one scenario. And there's hundreds and hundreds of other scenarios when, say, somebody passes away and somebody squats in their house, or, there's so many different scenarios where people, take possession and live in a house that they don't own or they've no interest in because they knew somebody, they had a friend, they slept on their couch for long enough, or the person moved away, or they noticed a property in the neighborhood that nobody in. And so they come in, and then all of a sudden the owner realizes, and a lengthy and oftentimes costly legal battle ensues during which time this person is not paying your rent. They're destroying your home. They might have cars and junkyard parked outside. They might be ripping the copper out of your wires in your property, but literally maybe systematically selling off your AC. They may be literally stripping your home of all the wiring, and they may be taking out your electrical panel because they think they can sell it. They may be taking out your kitchen, your floors, your doors, your baseboards because they think they can sell it, and you can't get rid of them. So think about that. It's just there's no part of a modern, free and fair society where that should be acceptable. But it is, and it has been. And the rights of the squatters have often been absolutely supersede the rights of the owner. And so the owner then has to call a lawyer, and then we have to notify the squatter 30 days that we're going to file for what's called an illegal detainer. If that squatter has any kind of legal knowledge whatsoever, they can hire their own representation, and they can drag this out for 5 months, 6 months, and in some states, years. Now, meanwhile, that's the squatter in the house. But meanwhile, the owner of the home is slowly going bankrupt because the owner of the home still has to pay taxes, pay insurance, pay their mortgage. And if the owner of the home doesn't pay those things, the owner of the home could lose their home, right? And so meanwhile, the owner's, maintaining these bills or not. And if they get so annoyed with the whole process that they stop paying their mortgage, stop paying insurance, stop paying their taxes, well, guess what? The county is going to foreclose on them for not paying a mortgage or for not paying the taxes. Okay. So now you've got an owner who has lost their property because of this issue. This is massive, and this is just not fair. And when you buy a home in foreclosure, so many times I find that somebody's just moved in because they saw that Mrs. Jones down the road unfortunately passed away. And they noticed that there's nobody there, and now they moved into Mrs. Jones's house. So I come along, 2 resolutions. I normally have to give them what's called cash for keys. So I go, and it's like a cash bazooka where you say, I own the home and I need you out, right? And they're like, well, I'll see you in court. And I say, look, why don't I just give you $5,000 now to move out? And if they know what they're doing, they'll say, I'll tell you what, I'll move out if you give me 7. Okay. And now you're negotiating with somebody who's got no rights to be in your house. But you know that the legal system doesn't have your back. And that's it at the end of the day. The legal system does not have your back. And there's a lot of other scenarios where during COVID, for instance, these eviction bans, and they shut down the courts and stuff like that, where you don't have, as a landowner, as a homeowner, as somebody who has their own debts and obligations to maintain this property, you don't have sufficient rights or sufficient recompense to resolve a situation through the legal system. And so people can take advantage of it. I've seen a lot of cases where owners get so frustrated, they literally take the law into their own hands out of pure frustration. In my case, I've always tried to resolve it with cash for keys, and I have paid tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash for keys to remove squatters. So this issue is a big issue. Now, I'm not political either one way or the other, but this is a bill I super support because it puts the onus back on the society in general, because there's a lot of societal damage done when an owner who owns a home has a squatter in his home. He can't pay it. He could lose it. There's a squatter destroying the neighborhood. The owner probably loses pride of ownership. The owner could end up in a foreclosure. The scenarios, the downside to society, because there's a freeloader who knows how to play the game, is so great. And then the owner themselves could lose faith in they're not going to invest ever again because they're so afraid of this ever happening again. And so think about the economic knock-on effect of somebody just saying, no, I'm out. I'm not going to do it again. And what's the upside? Some freeloader got to stay in somebody's house and destroy it and break it up and sell it. And the neighborhood had to deal with this squatter. So think about all the neighbors who are around the squatter. So much downside. So Clark, tell me what is in this bill. Tell me what it does and tell me what's different now, because this is such a great news. And I don't often get excited about things, but this is fair. So tell me about what's going on inside this legislation.
So it does 2 things. And here's what I really love about it is that a lot of times there's so much small writing in there, and that it gets to become very subjective, right? I don't feel like this is too subjective. I'm going to run through it. The individual has unlawfully entered and remains on the property. That's pretty obvious. Guy A moves in and he's not leaving. Check, right? The individual has been directed to leave the property by the owner, but doesn't. Hey, Mr. Squatter, leave. He says no. Check. The individual is not a current or former tenant in a legal dispute. Okay, you can say, hey, there's no lease. I don't even know who you are. Check, check, check. You have now met the criteria. There's just not much gray area in there. There's not much leverage for the squatter, which is super important. Okay, so then you get to pick up the phone, call the cops, and if you meet those 3 criteria, they will come and remove this. Now, here's the second piece. It's almost as important, is that you've got this easy checklist, but now there's actually a repercussion. Okay, so there's a first-degree misdemeanor if you make a false statement about obtaining this real property, okay? And there's a second-degree felony for basically creating damages over $1,000, okay? A second-degree felony, David, that's a big deal. And a first-degree felony, you may have heard these scams on Craigslist where you'll see this amazing deal to rent for $1,000 in like a $3,000 neighborhood, and it's some, not so great person that's just going to scam the $1,000. That's a first degree felony now to misrepresent your thing. So I love everything about this. It's amazing. It protects the seller or the owner of the property. It protects them from going bankrupt. It protects them from having to give $6,000 to somebody that doesn't deserve that money. In a way, David, we were talking earlier about, what should we talk about on this Timely 10, and this thing just popped up. The fact that they even had to come out and pass this legislation is like mind-boggling to me, that they have to say, hey, you are allowed to criminally remove someone from your house that is moved in. Like that in itself is mind-boggling. But here we are. It's passed. I'd rather have it. Thumbs up. I've said my piece. David, what about you? And we'll send each other out.
Yeah, this is so that so you can resolve your issue now the moment you find out about it.
Yeah.
Amazing. You can pick up the phone, call the cops show up, bang, it's resolved.
Yep.
You don't have to wait till Monday, call your lawyer. Your lawyer has to file 30 days, and then it could take 6 months. Think about the difference of that. It restores fairness. And, you mentioned there the second degree felony for essentially these Craigslist scams where people will pretend to want to rent your home. And they'll go and they will view your home, and they leave a window open, let's say at the back as a renter. Then they leave, and then they take the pictures that you had, they copy and paste the pictures that you had, let's say on forrent.com or Zillow, and they put them on Craigslist. And they have a $3,000 renter they listing, and they list it on Craigslist for $1,000. So everyone on Craigslist, oh my God, like I get a 4-bedroom, 2-bath in a $3,000 neighborhood for $1,000. And so this person, this unsuspecting renter, comes along and says, when can I meet you? Say, I'll meet you tomorrow, Tuesday. And so on Tuesday at 3:00, the unsuspecting person shows up and is met by this guy at the door who is a scammer. And they show him around the place, sign a lease there and then, take a $2,000 deposit, let's say in cash, and then the people move on in. And then we come along the following Monday, we're like, hey, dude, what are you doing in our house? I was like, well, I rented it. I'm like, you rented it from who? And I was like, man, you've just been scammed. You're going to have to leave, right? Now, in most cases, those people are like, oh my God, I just got scammed. So yeah, you're going to have to leave. But in those cases, even the people who have been scammed, I have said, well, we're not leaving because we got scammed by this guy, but we're in this house now and we're not leaving. You're going to have to force us out, And so think about that. It's bonkers. Now I could just call the cops and say, listen, these poor unfortunate people got scammed. And more importantly, the people who did the scam now, they are on the hook for a second degree or first degree felony. Love it. Clark, this should be rolled out nationally. Absolutely. If you are listening to this and you agree with this and you live in a different state, please talk to your local politicians and suggest this as something that's just fair. It's just fair. Anything other than this kind of resolution to an issue like that is it belongs in a communist society. It belongs in Venezuela. It doesn't belong in the United States. I came from I'm an immigrant here, and one of the core reasons I love this place is because the law is very clear, it's very clean, and it's enforceable, and it's quick. And this is just a great piece of legislation. And I'm glad to say that I live in Florida, and I'm glad to say that Florida is protecting me and my rights.
Yep. So with that, David, please go and subscribe. We'll end it there. This is a great news for the investor, for Florida homeowners, and also for other states that hopefully it starts to domino down to other states as well too. And hopefully California is listening. I don't know if California is listening to our podcast right now, David, but I hope they
might
are.
Be, but if you and if you vehemently disagree with what we're saying here,
yes,
by all means, contact us at burnyourboatswealth.com if you would like to chime in on this. And, if you have been a victim of a squatter and you think that this is unfair, then come in, let us know. But if you're never been a victim of a squatter, I'll gladly have the conversation with you. But if you have been a victim of a squatter and you think that this law is unfair, that would be a super interesting conversation. So please reach out to us, contact at burnyourboatswealth.com.
Thank you, guys. Talk soon. See ya.
Thank you for tuning in to The Timely 10. Be sure to click the like button and share, and connect with us on social media. Content in Burn Your Boats podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not legal or financial advice. Please review our legal disclaimer at burnyourboatswealth.com.